Hey! Welcome back to Oops My English, the podcast that makes learning English easy and enjoyable. I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo. Thanks for being here.
So today we're talking about something that happens to almost every English learner. That horrible moment when you're speaking, everything is going well, and then suddenly, nothing. Your mind goes blank. You freeze. The words just disappear.
If this has ever happened to you, don't worry, you're not alone. It happens to almost everyone, including advanced speakers. And today we're going to explain exactly why it happens and what you can do about it.
By the end of this episode, you'll understand the psychology behind freezing, learn practical techniques to recover quickly when it happens, and build strategies to prevent it from happening in the first place. Plus, you'll pick up lots of useful vocabulary for talking about communication, confidence, and mental states.
Before we dive in, quick reminder. If you enjoy learning with us, please subscribe, give this episode a thumbs up, and share it with a friend who's learning English. Especially if they've ever frozen mid-sentence. This episode might change everything for them.
Okay, Leo, let's start by describing what freezing actually feels like. Because I think when people understand they're not alone in this experience, it already helps.
Absolutely. So freezing is that moment when you're in a conversation, maybe you're telling a story or answering a question, and suddenly your brain just stops working. You know what you want to say, or at least you think you do, but the words won't come out. It's like there's a wall between your thoughts and your mouth. Your heart starts beating faster, your face might go red, and the more you try to think of the word, the further away it seems. Meanwhile, the other person is waiting, looking at you, and that makes everything worse. The silence feels like it lasts forever, even though it's probably only a few seconds. It's incredibly uncomfortable and embarrassing, and afterwards you feel frustrated with yourself because you know you can speak English, you've done it before. But in that moment, it's like all your knowledge just vanished.
That description is so accurate. I've experienced this myself, not just when learning languages, but even in my native language sometimes. It's a universal human experience, but it happens more often when we're speaking a foreign language because there's more cognitive load, more mental effort required.
Cognitive load is a really useful term. It means the amount of mental effort being used. When you're speaking a foreign language, your brain is doing multiple things at once, finding vocabulary, constructing grammar, monitoring pronunciation, listening to the other person, thinking about what to say next, and often translating from your native language too. That's a lot of work, and sometimes the system just overloads.
Exactly. Your brain is like a computer with too many programs running at once. Eventually, it freezes. But here's the important thing to understand. Freezing is not a sign that your English is bad. It's not a sign that you're stupid or incapable. It's simply a sign that your brain is temporarily overwhelmed. And there are specific reasons why this happens, and specific things you can do about it.
Let's talk about the main reasons why people freeze when speaking English. The first and biggest reason is anxiety. When you're nervous, your body goes into what's called fight or flight mode. This is a survival response that humans developed thousands of years ago to deal with physical danger. When a tiger was chasing your ancestors, their bodies would release stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones are great for running away from tigers. They increase your heart rate, sharpen your senses, and prepare your muscles to move quickly. But here's the problem. Your body can't tell the difference between a tiger and a job interview. When you're anxious about speaking English, your body reacts the same way. And one of the effects of this stress response is that it actually impairs the parts of your brain responsible for language and memory. So the more anxious you feel, the harder it becomes to access words and form sentences. It's a cruel irony. The more you worry about freezing, the more likely you are to freeze.
That's such an important point. The anxiety itself causes the freezing, which causes more anxiety, which causes more freezing. It becomes a vicious cycle. A vicious cycle is when one problem causes another problem, which makes the first problem worse, and it keeps going round and round. Breaking this cycle is key to overcoming freezing.
The second reason people freeze is perfectionism. Many English learners have this idea that they need to speak perfectly, correct grammar, perfect pronunciation, sophisticated vocabulary. So when they're speaking, part of their brain is constantly monitoring and judging everything they say. Was that the right word? Did I use the correct tense? Is my pronunciation okay? Do I sound stupid? This internal critic is exhausting and distracting. It takes up mental resources that should be used for actually communicating. And when you're so focused on being perfect, the moment you make a small mistake or can't find the exact word you want, you panic. You freeze because you're not willing to continue with anything less than perfection.
I see this so much with learners. They'd rather say nothing than say something imperfect. But here's the truth. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. We use the wrong words. We start sentences and change direction halfway through. We say and constantly. Imperfect communication is still communication. In fact, getting your message across with a few mistakes is far more successful than staying silent because you're afraid of errors.
The third reason for freezing is lack of practice in real conversations. Many learners spend a lot of time studying English, reading textbooks, doing grammar exercises, watching videos, using apps, but they don't actually speak very much. Speaking is a completely different skill from reading or listening. It requires quick retrieval of vocabulary, real-time sentence construction, and instant responses. If you only practice these skills occasionally, they won't be automatic when you need them. It's like learning to drive by reading the manual, but never actually getting in a car. When you finally do get behind the wheel, you'll freeze because nothing is automatic yet.
That's such a good analogy. Speaking needs to become automatic, and the only way to make it automatic is through regular practice. Your mouth and brain need to work together so many times that the connection becomes effortless. The fourth reason for freezing is translating from your native language. When you think in your native language and then translate into English, you're adding an extra step that takes time and mental energy. Sometimes the translation doesn't work because the languages have different structures or expressions. And while you're translating, the conversation moves on without you. You're always one step behind, always catching up, and that delay creates pressure that leads to freezing.
So those are the four main causes: anxiety, perfectionism, lack of speaking practice, and translating. Now let's talk about what to do when you actually freeze, because it's going to happen sometimes, no matter how prepared you are. The question is, how do you recover quickly instead of spiraling into panic?
The first and most important technique is to buy yourself time with filler phrases. Native speakers do this constantly. When we need a moment to think, we don't just stand there in silence. We use phrases that keep the conversation going while our brain catches up. Phrases like, "Let me think," or "That's a good question," or "How can I explain this?" or "What's the word I'm looking for?" These phrases tell the other person that you're still engaged, you're still thinking, you haven't disappeared. They reduce the awkward silence, and they reduce your own pressure because you're still producing language, even if it's not the main point yet.
I want to emphasize how powerful this is. The silence is what makes freezing feel so terrible. When you fill that silence with a thinking phrase, the whole experience changes. Instead of standing there mutely while panic rises, you're actively managing the situation. You're showing confidence even though you're struggling. And often, just saying, "Let me think," gives your brain the moment it needs to find the word.
Another great technique is to describe what you can't remember. Let's say you're trying to say the word refrigerator, but it's completely gone from your mind. Instead of freezing, you can say, "The big cold box in the kitchen where you keep food." You've communicated the idea perfectly, even without the exact word. Native speakers do this too. We often forget specific words and describe them instead. It's not a failure. It's a communication strategy.
This is called circumlocution, talking around a word you can't remember. It's an incredibly valuable skill because it means you're never truly stuck. You might not have the perfect word, but you always have the ability to describe what you mean. Some useful phrases for this are, it's a thing that, or it's like a, or it's what you use when, or you know the place where. With these structures, you can describe almost anything.
The third technique is to simply acknowledge the freeze and move on. You can say, "Sorry, I lost my train of thought," or "I completely forgot what I was going to say," or "My mind just went blank." This is honest, it's human, and it's relatable. The other person will understand because it happens to everyone. Often they'll help you. They might guess what you were trying to say, or they'll ask a question that gets the conversation moving again. The worst thing you can do is pretend the freeze isn't happening while you internally panic. Acknowledging it takes away its power.
Now let's talk about how to prevent freezing before it happens. Prevention is even better than recovery. The first strategy is to practice speaking regularly, not just once a week, but every day if possible. Even 10 minutes of speaking practice daily is better than 1 hour once a week. You can talk to yourself, describe your surroundings, summarize what you watched on TV, have imaginary conversations. The goal is to make English production automatic so that when you're in a real conversation, you're not starting from zero.
The second prevention strategy is to build a bank of ready-made phrases. When you have chunks of language memorized and automatic, you don't have to construct them from scratch every time. Phrases like, "to be honest," or "the thing is," or "what I mean is," or "in my experience." These become launching pads that give your brain time to prepare the rest of the sentence. They also make you sound more fluent because you're not hesitating at the start of every thought.
The third strategy is to work on your mindset. Accept that mistakes are part of learning. Accept that freezing will happen sometimes. Accept that imperfect communication is still valuable communication. When you take the pressure off yourself, when you stop demanding perfection, the anxiety decreases and freezing becomes less frequent. Tell yourself before conversations, "My goal is to communicate, not to be perfect. If I freeze, I'll recover. It's not a disaster."
The fourth strategy is to stop translating. Start thinking in English directly. This takes time and practice, but it's one of the most important shifts you can make. When you're alone, narrate your life in English. When you see something, think the English word, not your native word, then English. When you have a thought, try to form it in English from the beginning. The more you practice thinking in English, the less you'll need to translate, and the faster your speaking will become.
Let me share some vocabulary related to this topic that might be useful. We've mentioned freeze, which means to suddenly stop and be unable to move or speak. Your mind freezes, you freeze up, you're frozen. Blank is another important word. When your mind goes blank, it means you suddenly can't think of anything. My mind went completely blank. Block is similar. A mental block is when something is stopping you from thinking or remembering. I had a total mental block. Stumble means to make mistakes or have difficulty while speaking. I stumbled over my words. Fumble is similar. To fumble for words means to struggle to find the right words.
Some more useful vocabulary. Tongue-tied means unable to speak because you're nervous or embarrassed. I was so tongue-tied, I couldn't say anything. Self-conscious means uncomfortably aware of yourself and worried about what others think. I felt really self-conscious about my accent. Flustered means agitated and confused, often because you're under pressure. I got flustered when everyone was staring at me. Overwhelmed means feeling like there's too much to handle. I was overwhelmed by all the questions. Composed is the opposite. It means calm and in control. She stayed composed even when she forgot her lines.
And here are some expressions about communication and confidence. Find your voice means to become confident in expressing yourself. Speak your mind means to say what you're really thinking. Get your point across means to communicate your message successfully. Lost my train of thought means you forgot what you were going to say. Put your foot in your mouth means to say something embarrassing or inappropriate by mistake.
So here's what I want you to remember from this episode. Freezing when speaking is completely normal and happens to everyone. It's caused by anxiety, perfectionism, lack of practice, and translating. You can recover by using filler phrases, describing words you can't remember, and acknowledging the freeze honestly. You can prevent it by practicing daily, building ready-made phrases, improving your mindset, and thinking in English directly. And most importantly, freezing is not a measure of your English ability. It's just a temporary brain overload that passes.
Okay, listeners, here's your challenge for today. Think of 3 filler phrases from this episode and memorize them. Let me think. That's a good question. How can I explain this? Practice saying them out loud. Make them automatic. The next time you feel a freeze coming, use one of these phrases instead of panicking. It will change everything.
We'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced freezing when speaking English? What situation was it? What did you do? What would you do differently now? Write in the comments and share your experiences. Your story might help another learner who's going through the same thing.
If this episode helped you understand why you freeze and what to do about it, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to hear this.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us. You didn't waste it. You invested it in yourself.
We're proud of you for being here and learning with us.
This was Oops, My English with Mia and Leo.
Until next time, keep learning, keep speaking, and remember, freezing doesn't define you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care. See you in the next episode.